The freshest veggies in a snow-wrapped Europe deep in the midst of winter come from the desert. The land shouldn't be able to grow a single leaf, but it earns billions of dollars feeding 740 million people. Standing above the desert, you see a white ocean burning 40 kilometers across southern Spain. The land is so dry it barely qualifies as alive, but it has thriving greens spread across acres, bright enough to be seen from space. How did Europe's driest corner become the planet's most productive garden? That's what we're about to find out. Step off that aerial view and walk inside. The temperature hits you first. Outside, southern Spain is baking. Inside, it's damp and green. You are standing in a wireframe skeleton with polyethylene plastic stretched across both sides. A thin layer of air is sandwiched in between. It looks cheap, almost primitive. It's neither. This is not one greenhouse. 14,000 growers built this system using 300,000 tons of plastic. Sunlight strikes the plastic surface. Some radiation bounces back, but the rest passes through. Once that energy enters this enclosed space, it can't escape. This place reflects so much sun that it's actually cooling the planet while the rest of Spain burns. Heat builds. The temperature rises. The air inside becomes a concentrated energy chamber, and your plants feel every degree of it. Higher temperatures and controlled light accelerate photosynthesis. Your crops are growing at the pace this system forces them to. That's why a single greenhouse here produces 30 times more output per acre than an open European field. But light and heat are only two variables. This machine controls everything. Humidity levels are monitored and adjusted. CO2 concentrations are tuned for maximum growth. A computerized fertilizer system dissolves precise nutrient combinations into liquid and pumps them directly to each plant's roots. Nothing is wasted or approximated. Below the surface, mulching locks heat and moisture into the soil, so the energy that took all day to build doesn't disappear overnight. Then there is the water. Almeria receives less than 200 millimeters of rain a year, something that should make farming here impossible. However, with drip irrigators delivering water directly to the roots of plants, waste is cut to almost nothing. Channels on the roof catch every rare raindrop. Storage pools hold reserves, with shade discs floating on the surface to stop evaporation and block algae growth. This greenhouse doesn't just save water, it saves over 90% of what an open field would consume. Even pests are handled without chemicals. Bank plants are strategically placed inside and between greenhouses. They attract specific insects whose only appetite is for the pests attacking your crop. Your vegetables are left untouched. Your costs stay low. In summer, when the Spanish sun becomes brutal, chalk gets dusted across the outer plastic surface. It reflects the excess heat and keeps the inside workable. Come autumn, the chalk is washed off, and every unit of solar energy is pulled back in for the growing season. Almeria's winters range from 12 to 14 degrees, just warm enough. Just enough solar radiation to heat these plastic houses to growing temperatures without burning a single cubic meter of natural gas. In Northern Europe, particularly in the Netherlands, glass greenhouses run on industrial gas heating systems so powerful that they generate surplus electricity sold back to the national grid. They cannot survive without that fuel. Your greenhouses here run on sunlight alone. That single difference makes a Spanish plastic greenhouse 22 times more energy efficient than a Dutch glass one. That gap shows up in the final price of every tomato, every pepper, every cucumber that leaves this region. Someone decided to build that system here in Europe's only desert. But who chose to build a farming empire in a place where nothing should grow? And why did it take a dictatorship to make it happen? Can you guess? Drop it in the comments. Travel back to the 1940s. Almeria is the second poorest province in Spain. Dry, cracked desert, a few grazing fields, and absolutely nothing that suggests this land will one day feed a continent. At the same time, Francisco Franco, Spain's iron-fisted dictator, is running the country with a fanatic obsession for control. His government is paranoid about food security. Spain is poor and isolated, already struggling to feed itself. So Franco launches a settlement program. Rural migrants are physically relocated into Almeria, handed plots of land, and told to make something out of nothing. That wave of migration runs all the way through the 1980s. Its fingerprint is still visible today. 95% of farms are small and family-owned, but the land fights back. The soil is naturally unproductive, and traditional farming yields almost nothing worth selling. Then farmers stumble onto something interesting. Sand layered over the soil grows more than bare soil does. Nobody fully agrees on how it was discovered. Maybe coastal winds, deliberate experimentation, or pure accident. The result is undeniable. Sand retains moisture and regulates soil temperature. Eventually, it outperforms the desert dirt beneath it. When cheap polyethylene plastic hits global markets, farmers apply the same logic. Plastic over sand, yields boost in turn. In 1963, agricultural engineers Leandro Perez and Bernabe Aguar built the first greenhouse. It's 500 square meters with wooden posts, a wire frame, and a plastic sheet. It looks like nothing. In its first year, it earns over 2,200 euros, nearly double the initial investment. That number changes the scenario. The National Institute of Colonization moves in with subsidies and structured land allocation. They seem to be quite interested in accelerating the expansion. By 1975, plastic had already covered 30 square kilometers of the desert, but farmers are still guessing. Training is minimal. Results are inconsistent. The system looks promising, but it's running on instinct rather than knowledge. It needs money. It needs structure. And it needs someone willing to bet on it. The greenhouse works, the proof is there. But there is one problem that nobody has solved yet. Building a greenhouse costs around 12 times the value of the land itself. For a region full of small, family-owned farms with almost no capital, that number is a joke. In 1966, Caja Rural de Almeria, a small local rural bank that had absolutely no business betting on a desert, stepped in. It starts offering loans specifically for greenhouse construction. The bank pools deposits from northern Almeria. There, table grape farming generates a predictable income. That pooled capital gets redirected south toward the greenhouse expansion. Farmers borrow, build, and plant. But the bank has just handed out loans to untrained farmers using experimental methods on land that recently couldn't grow a decent weed. If yields fail, loans default. If enough loans default, the bank goes down with them. The whole system is one bad harvest away from becoming a very expensive cautionary tale. So in 1975, an experimental agricultural station is established. It looks like a research facility. It is actually the bank's self-preservation strategy dressed up in a lab coat. Better farming techniques mean higher yields. Higher yields mean higher income. Higher income means farmers repay their loans. Loan repayment keeps the bank alive and frees up capital for the next round. The feedback loop locks in. Credit funds construction. Construction drives yields. Yields generate income. Income repays loans. Repaid loans release more credit. Around and around it goes. Each rotation makes the whole system bigger and harder to break. That cooperative structure continues to grow until it becomes the Cajamar Group. Today, it accounts for around 15% of Spain's entire agri-finance sector. Not bad for a bank that once bet everything on a desert. Now that capital and knowledge are finally aligned, the wall that once stopped everything is gone. The system is ready to scale. But scaling a greenhouse empire in a desert is one thing. Selling its produce to an entire continent is another. Who exactly is buying all this? And why can't they stop? The greenhouses work. The banks are happy. Then the 80s hit. Spain joins the European Economic Community. Suddenly, every trade barrier in Europe crumbles. 500 million hungry customers are now just a truck ride away. Northern Europe has a problem. It freezes in the winter. But people still want tomatoes in January and peppers in February. The market doesn't care about frost. Almeria doesn't freeze, though. While northern farms are buried under snow, these greenhouses are sitting pretty at 14 degrees. They're cranking out 2 or 3 full harvests a year. The timing is the ultimate edge. Today, the region moves 3.5 million tons of produce and hauls in 3.7 billion euros. We're talking bell peppers, cucumbers, and eggplants, only crops where buyers can actually taste or notice the difference survive here. Northern buyers pay top dollar for quality. Staples like wheat never make the cut. Over 80% of the total produce leaves Spain entirely, headed straight for high-end supermarket shelves in the north. EU regulations make the game more interesting. Strict pesticide rules and import taxes block cheap competition. European shoppers want local and sustainable, and Almeria checks every box, but thousands of farmers growing the same crops would usually cannibalize each other, competing over price. To avoid bleeding each other out, they decided to team up. 18 giant cooperatives were formed across the region. Farmers pooled their harvests, negotiated as one giant block, and sold to wholesalers together. It killed the race to the bottom and kept contracts tight. An entire support city sprouted around the plastic. It involved seed giants, plastic factories, and huge desalination plants. Just like that, Almeria went from the backwater of Spain to the richest spot in all of Andalusia. But a system this big never runs clean. Somewhere under all that cash, the pressure is growing, and the people feeling the squeeze never actually signed up for the job. The system looks sustainable and cutting edge on the surface, sure, but if you peek behind the curtain, the story changes. The plastic goes first. Every sheet needs replacing every 3 to 4 years. Across 370 square kilometers, that's an insane amount of material cycling through. The authorities talk a big game about recycling, but many farmers take the shortcut through the black market instead. That plastic ends up scattered across beaches, inside animals, or shredded into microplastics that enter the water. The seas around Almeria carry 30 times more microplastics than the coastlines next door. The region famous for saving water poisons the well. The carbon footprint is the next big cost. In a heated greenhouse, every kilo of tomatoes burns through the equivalent of 5 teaspoons of diesel. They emit 6 times as much carbon as a field-grown tomato into the air. Spain dodges this bullet by using solar power instead of gas, but that plastic bill hasn't gone away, and you won't find that number printed on a supermarket label in London or Berlin. Then you have the people. 100,000 workers keep this engine running. Over half are Moroccan migrants. Many are off the books. Being undocumented means they have zero safety net, no way to report abuse, and no seat at the table. Some are making less than minimum wage, living in makeshift shacks or basements without running water, just a stone's throw from the billion-dollar greenhouses they work in all day. This is the secret sauce. Dirt cheap labor means dirt cheap produce. That's how you get a 3.7 billion euro payday every year. The math only works because the people at the bottom can't fight back. Almeria feeds millions. It turned a wasteland into a powerhouse. Both of those things are true, but so is everything you just heard. So why is the entire world trying to copy that model anyway? By 2050, the Earth's population will hit 10 billion. That sounds like a statistic until you do the math. You need to grow more food in the next few decades than humanity has produced in the past 800 years combined, on land that is not expanding, with water that is disappearing. That's not a farming challenge. That is a civilizational one. Arable land is not growing fast enough. Opening new farmland at scale is slow, expensive, and increasingly destructive. Expanding outward is largely off the table. The only option you have left is growing more on what already exists. That's exactly what a greenhouse does. Today, there are around 3.2 million acres of greenhouses worldwide, an area the size of Puerto Rico covered in plastic and glass, and the fastest growth is occurring in low and middle-income nations facing severe water scarcity: Mexico, Turkey, Egypt, Morocco, places where the Almeria logic makes sense. China has taken this further than anyone else on Earth. It holds around 60% of the world's greenhouses. Its largest cluster sits around Weifang, 820 square kilometers of controlled farming planted directly on the North China Plain. It's one of the most water-stressed regions on the planet. Almeria looks modest by comparison. The appeal goes beyond food. It's about control. A government that can grow crops without relying on rainfall has removed one major variable from its national security equation. That's worth a lot of plastic. Greenhouses also cut fertilizer use by over 95%. Fertilizers run off into natural gas, and their runoff destroys local soil and water. Removing that dependency matters more every year as governments tighten environmental regulations, and your average consumer is simply done eating tasteless produce. In the US, over 35% of tomatoes are now grown indoors. In Canada, over half. People want flavor, consistency, and fresh vegetables in the middle of winter. Greenhouses deliver all three without an apology. The model is spreading because it solves too many problems at once to ignore. But every country that copies Almeria is also copying everything beneath it. Is this model actually worth copying? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for the next big story. See you soon. History does not just repeat, it rhymes. So make sure you're listening for the next Money Echoes. Subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.